How is going to be the meetup tonight? So Sandro is here. We're going to have we call a Fireside event. Is that we're going to talk about specific topics, question, subjects that we selected, that we received it before from mostly from the organizer of the other meetup, um, and we're going to change. Um we may talk between the three of us, but if you have questions that are regarding the topic we're talking, you're invited to ask your question. Olivier will say who have the right to talk. He's the master. If you want to talk, just put money on the table and it's gonna be faster. Something like this. Okay, Olivier, what's gonna be the yes. So yes, so for to choose which topics will be the first, we put the record in here. You can vote the telemeter and choose which topic you want to be the first one.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, for example, as we are discussing, just raise your hand, and then we will interrupt what we are saying, go back to you, and we make this a more of a conversation, right? We have a very cozy kind of environment, so it will be good to have interactions.
So just before can you present yourself, because maybe not everyone know you.
So I'm Sandro Mancuso. I was involved in the very early days of the software craftsmanship. I was very upset with the direction that Agile took, and some of the ideas of the software craftsmanship movement really resonated with me in the early days. I was the first one to create the community in London, and one of the first in Europe. I spent a big chunk of my life traveling around, spreading ideas about software craftsmanship, helping to seed other communities around Europe. And I wrote a book called The Software Craftsman that kind of tried to put into words, or in a written form, all the ideas that I had, and try to define a little bit better what craftsmanship is. And I was very close with the guys in Chicago, like Bob and others. And I today have a company called Codurance, where we do software for clients, mostly in software modernization space. So that's about a bit of me.
So Olivier, we have a winner.
At the moment, yes, we can organization scale without a traditional hierarchy with 9 points. The second one is how to follow best practices at scale with 6 points, but I propose to wait.
Wait a little bit more. Okay. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, something you want to talk.
Uh, well, there is few subjects. So I had this conversation like few years ago with you. I will just to we've had a discussion about how you manage your company. So you have something that you call open financials. So like you open the financial of the company to all people. But I remember that at that time also you've been researching and discussing about open salary. So everyone gonna share their salary with the staff. So I'd like to get your feedback. Did you do it? Did it work? Did it work? How is it now?
Okay, starting easy then. All right. So okay. So just to give more context, Endurance is 9 years old. Started from scratch, two people working from Starbucks, grew to become like a 200 and something people company in 3 different countries, and with a few remote people in a few more countries. So the the reason I'm giving that context is because when we were having those conversations, and even early days, early practices that we used in the company, some of them we've done it. By the way, the answer is yes, we've done it, but we didn't keep all the practices as we grew. Some of the practices remain good, others they didn't scale. And there were also some legal implications with some of the practices that we had. So just to give more context, so in the very early days, we were a much smaller company, and then we decided to open everything. So all the salaries were public within the company, of course, not outside. All the financials were public, and we could make a lot of decisions together because you had a much smaller group of people. It was easier to explain the different issues that we had. And even when people had different opinions in how to solve them, we could easily explain everything for everyone. And because the company is small, you end up having the access to information is much easier and faster. You don't need to do a lot to share information. So as we scale as a company, and I appreciate that 200 and something is not a lot compared to a lot of other organizations. So if we had problems with 50, 70, 100, I cannot even imagine kind of problems that companies will have with 500, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, and so on. So there are a lot to talk about the practices, but one thing that happened was GDPR, for example. So there was a legal implication that we cannot share some data. So one of the things that we were forced to close, or we would be legally exposed, was the salaries. Because of GDPR, it takes just one person to take us to court, someone that left Codunus was unhappy, and say, hey, all my public data was available and I was not comfortable with it. And it doesn't matter if they try to sign a paper before, because they can be coerced to do that, otherwise they will not get the job. So GDPR, we had to close a lot of information. In terms of the financials, so in terms of the open salaries, we opened it, but we closed it. GDPR was just one problem that we had to deal with, and that was it. We had to close it. But that was not the only one. As soon as we expose salary is something very sensitive, as you all know, and we are not very good at comparing ourselves to others. Quite often, I'm talking about in general terms, of course, we tend to take some of the skills that we are better at. Let's say that is something that you know very well, and you try to compare yourself using that measure to others, which make most of the time you better than the others, and you should have a better salary than the others. But not always we are in a position to identify their skills that you might not be so good at. And on top of that, we do a job. When we work for a company, you do some specific jobs. There are a few people that do similar jobs, but they're not necessarily the same job. So we also cannot see across all the different types of work that is done by other people and how they contribute to the company. Imagine like a football team. You have 11 players plus another 11 on the bench, but they're not all the same. They don't have the same salary for a reason, right? So we have people that are very good at playing one position. They are amazing at the position, but that's it. Other people, they can play quite a few positions to a good degree. Other people are there just to make sure that certain things work in a specific way. And when you are building a company, it's very similar. You will start becoming very strategic in how you assemble your teams. You don't just say, I'll have all developers, they are all measured by the same skills, and they should all have the same salary. So you hire people, mainly in product. We are a service company, but product company is even worse. Like, you need to be very particular in how you hire those people, how you compose your teams. And you hire people from slightly different reasons, right? So, and because that criteria is so wide, it's so complex, not everyone is equipped to understand the difference in salaries because they don't understand the difference in impact. And not everyone that was hired at a certain salary, because when you are doing the interview process, there is an expectation on both sides, from the employee towards the company, but from the company towards the employee. And not always that expectation is met. So there is a financial negotiation, but sometimes that negotiation, that expectation is not met. An example that we had, for example, we had people that interviewed really well, said all the right things, but their performance was not appropriate, was not according to the expectation. And then people that were having a better performance would look at a bad performer that was highly paid and say, hey, my salary should be the same as these guys. But then we had to explain, but this is not a good example because that this is a person that we would like, we would be very happy if they resign, if this person resigned. But now it becomes very awkward now. See what I'm saying? So this created far more problems than solved. And also, how often do you review those salaries? Who review the salaries when all salaries are open? So this is going to touch in other scaling the company. When you have a team of 5, it's one thing. When you have a team of 100, 200, how do you do salary reviews? Who is responsible for reviewing those salaries? And we had almost like in the early days where everyone could review each other's salary. It was crazy. Everyone was getting like 30-40% of pay rise every year. I give you a good salary, you give me a good salary, you're all good. We can kill each other during the day job. We hate each other, but during the performance review, like, he does a great job. No, Sandro does a great job. And that so then we start having other problems. So unfortunately, there is a degree of maturity that people need to have in order to have certain practices. And some of them didn't age well. So GDPR was one problem, but we had other problems as well. Sorry, it was a very long, but it's a very complicated one.
I had a similar. I put in place when I was in Southeast Asia. I put in my company in place a similar situation. What we did is for already it was important that everyone understand why they had a salary of that amount approximately. So what we did, we made a career path, but linked to the value that was bringing to the company, not linked to the number of years stay in the company. And so what we'll say everyone that enters the company is an apprentice. Everyone. At the beginning, you enter, you're an apprentice. After a while, or if you come out from the universities, take a little bit more time thing. But for a senior person or for any good developers, after 2 months, it would either move to the maker. That was what we said. That's all the developers that just have knowledge of the stack, but not having the behaviors of a software craft or different, not being an ambassador of the company and so on. The kind of people that we were considering that in the market we could find easily. And we had another path that was the path of the craft that we had. It was like we have the journeyman, then we have the discipline, then the master. Master was, I was saying that the master is there. It's Sandro Mancuso, it's Uncle Bob. That's the master. But even them, they're not there. So that was super far from us. And we create a table that was able that every 6 months, some more senior, like the disciple were able to review the table to say, okay, how we can bring the people higher on the sentence. And we did this every year, but a review of the people every quarter. So showing that if you increase on your knowledge, if you work on your knowledge, if you increase on the value you're bringing, then you have a possibility to increase the salary. If you just want to do your job, you do your job and you get your salary and finish. But the people that wanted to really implicate in the company, we gratify by the money. And it worked. But we had tension. And one of the tension I told you, I think it was lunchtime or this afternoon, I remember exactly. We had a tension. We had a guy was a very senior developer. He had like 20 years of experience. And there was a guy that has like 3 years experience. But that guy had very good behaviors. Of course, he studied outside of Vietnam. So he had the good behaviors, very good knowledge in IT, software development, and everything. So he was a journeyman. So he had a higher salary than that guy have 20 years of experience. But to explain, you say, look on the table. That's explain why you have your salary, why he has this salary. If you start to now to implicate yourself, learn modern practice, then okay, we're gonna increase the salary. But he didn't agree and he left. And okay, but that was not the big deal. You said yes.
I had a question. What if, for example, your company grow more and suddenly you have to change the values that you put in the path of the salary of the career?
But the thing is that we create the model with a complex thinking. And as with a complex thinking, so we say our model is true today, but maybe tomorrow is not anymore. So we need to continuously review, continuously improve. So that's the answer. Okay. We answer your question?
Yeah.
Great.
So how would you connect with continuous education inside this growing company? How would you organize that in order then to maybe just how would you connect both?
I have a very, how can I say, a very strong opinion about this, because there are two sides to this. There is you as an individual, your own continuous education, and there is the knowledge that the company needs to move. They're not same, don't need to be the same. If they are aligned, awesome. If they're not. So I wrote a full book on it. And I think that having personal responsibility for your career is like an area that we focused a lot during in the software craftsmanship community, right? So if you want to be a professional, you need to take ownership of your career. That means that you cannot transfer the responsibility for your own education to the people that employ you. A lot of developers feel that it's the company's job to educate them. But I don't feel this way. I think that, and I feel that there is a lot of people that have this entitlement where they think that everyone needs to do everything for them. Developers today is a developer's market. Developers feel that they are prima donnas, right? Superstars. And they feel that everyone should be doing everything. It doesn't work like that. So companies are a business. You should never lose focus of that. And you yourself, you are a business. You might not even understand that, but you offer a service and you are paid for the service. And if you want to be paid for the service or have more options for potential clients, you need to offer a better service. It's as simple as that. So, but if you transfer that responsibility to someone else, companies have needs. And they should invest on things that will bring their benefit. The same way that you have needs. You should invest in things that will give you the benefit. So the way I see it, me as a professional, I want to make sure that I'm as good as I can be, the best I can be. Doing that, I will always be in a position where I can choose the job that I do. If I transfer that, I will learn what the company allows me to learn, which means that my knowledge will be limited by what I can get from the company, right? And then if you say, but I think that still companies benefit from the knowledge that I have. Of course they do. That's why they pay your salary, right? They benefit from the knowledge that you have, so they pay a salary for that. I think that companies are smart in offering training. I think like the companies that invest in their people should be treasured. You should like say, you know what, like I like because like they are investing on me, but should not conflate that with their obligation. All right. So they are different things. They are training you in things that are important for them, and that's where it stops. And when people don't like when I say that, it's just to change. So in order to make sense, let me change the perspective. Think about the people that you pay for the service. All of us here, one way or another, we pay services. You go to a hairdresser to cut your hair, to have your hair cut, or to a dentist, or a lawyer, or a builder, a gardener, a cleaner, whatever you do. There are people that you pay for services, right? Now imagine that you go to your dentist, that you are paying to be there, And the dentist looks at your teeth and says, hey, I'm not sure if I can solve that. Can you pay me a training course? Imagine your dentist asking you to buy them a book for a training. And let's say that you are really crazy enough to do that. Oh, of course, Mr. Dentist, I'm going to pay you a training course. I'm going to send you in a very expensive training course. And then you pay the dentist to go to a training course to learn the knowledge, to get the knowledge, and then you pay them again to actually do the service. You still pay the dentist now to use that knowledge to solve your problem. How does it sound? Is it something that you'll be willing to do? So why do we want companies to do the same for us? All right. I normally am very thankful for all the companies that provided me knowledge, but I never treated that as their obligation. My education, my responsibility. We are very well paid, and I believe that everyone that is a developer in the world today earns more than the average of salary of any other country, right? Of any other person. The average of salaries in the industry, our juniors are above that. We can afford our own books, I guess.
Well, I have like slightly different opinion of that.
First,
Why? Because today the company is offering a salary, right? One of the advantages that I see in some companies is like they are offering also the time that you will invest that, in learning. It can be like, what I see is like, it's done by the company if it is possible, but it's also done by the person itself. So it's like when I see, for example, like big football players, like I'm gonna recite one, like Cristiano Ronaldo, somebody like that. So it's like always he's training himself even more than the others in time that he shouldn't be training himself. So that's one side of the coin. The other side is also because the club give him few time to do it. I'm not saying that, like you said, I agree that in the side that you say that the company can give you that as advantage, and I see it as an advantage as like the salary. So it's like if somebody is like he's hiring me and saying, okay, I'm gonna give you a day off that you can do whatever you'd like to learn or to do something, I would say yes. That's one of the advantages that I had. But like if the company is only focusing, and I'm saying only focusing on only getting money done, at some point they're gonna lose their employees, or they're gonna lose the quality of the deliveries that they give. I'm gonna give you one that is based on this statistic that I've seen. If you look to what you call, I don't know if you know about DORA, the thing that it's an institute created by Google to do research and statistic about the developer and about everything that's happening in the industry. And I'm gonna explain why. So they try to do a statistic about the high performance companies. What is the average time of developer and what you do in that time? So the high performance companies, they have like 50% to build their features, and the other time they have 5% for security, 10% for continuous improvement. This is what we're talking about. And the other time for different tasks, it can be like incident management and other stuff. So in my opinion, it's like, it's both of them. The company can do something like offering even, I will not say training but offering time, especially time, can be investing time, and we see it as an investment as a company. It can be like 2 hours in a week, or it can be like, I don't know, like a hackathon one day in a month. And also the person itself should also invest in their personal time to do it, like what we are doing right now, because we already finished our work, but we are here. So we are investing our time in that.
Sure, but we cannot conflate an obligation from the company.
Yeah, sure.
To like a strategy of the company to make sure that they have well-motivated employees, that they have big retention, because we have far more demand for software professionals than we have the offer right now. So companies go way out of their way to make sure that people are happy. which these hopefully will change one day. We'll go back to actually be professionals and focus on doing a job instead of like be happy because they have a football table somewhere, right? So, or we can play video game during working hours. So the thing is, as a company, and you want to make sure that you provide space so people learn and get a bit more creative, but this is still an investment. For example, we opened at some point that we had a policy where everyone could go to any conference in Europe with everything paid up to 5 days. We had that policy for a few years, right? So that was one way that we used to attract developers. It felt that not only attracting, but we would have people that would be going to, for COVID, everything was more in person, and they would go out to some of the top conferences in Europe to acquire knowledge, and that knowledge would be useful to the work that we do. One of the most favorite and popular conferences that people would go to was a gaming conference in Malaga or in somewhere in Spain. And how was that related whatsoever to the work that we do? So then we had to change the policy. We had to say, look, we pay you for whatever training that you want. You give you whatever time, not only 5 days, I can give you a full-blown month. But you need to tell us how that new knowledge will benefit our business. Because that is the difference, right? You are not there just to, I want the company to do, besides paying my salary, to create a space for me to learn whatever I want and not consider how you apply that back. Because the ones that do that are not with us anymore. Because they took the piece. All right. If you want to be treated as professionals, you need to behave as professionals. If someone is paying us a salary and is creating a space for us to learn, you need to use that well and contribute that back. Because otherwise, companies will look for the people that have the behavior that is aligned to what they are doing. That's the other side. And it's funny, like, like I was speaking to my wife the other day, how there are two things, I think I even tweeted about that. There are two things that changed how you see the world. Well, two of the many things. One is to have a child. It really changed how you see. Another one is employing people. I wish that more and more people employed other people. And when you start using your own money to employ people, and their work is essential for the success of the company, for the collective success of that company, you have a very different view of the world. And you would expect certain behaviors that when you don't have, you would be a bit disappointed. That's it.
How would you organize this work? So let's say you choose to be an employer with employees, and you want to organize all that, and you grow. What would be your opinion? Something like a hierarchy or something flat or in between? And it will be the first question.
I don't know if you want, because I spoke a lot. I don't know if you want to talk. I can go back, but just if you want.
Okay, I can go. I can go for this one. Well, it actually depends. Why I'm saying that, because what you need to know is like, and this is, I'm gonna say it as, when you are employing people, you are trying, let's say, to have, so they can have a little bit of space to do what they need to do. But in the same time, they need to be, and this is what you were speaking about, they need to be inside the boundaries, in some boundaries, so it can be beneficial for the company. And why I say it depends, because when you are like in a small organization, it's going to be easy to be in a flat one. So it's really easy, because if you need some kind of feedback, you're gonna have like one person that is managing, maybe I will say a number, but I'm not sure, 25 or 30. So it's really easy. But at some point, when you have many people, you're gonna have a lot of information to process. and you need somebody to, let's say, I will not say filter, but let's say reorganize that information, maybe prioritize them so you can be sure what is the most important one to take decisions. And when you attain that level, let's say, of hierarchy, you're gonna be on the top. And at the same time, some important information, they're gonna be less important than before to take your decision. I will not give a number because I'm not sure about the number itself, but mainly this is how I see it. But also there is also another aspect, depending also how the team is organized. So it's like if you have autonomous team, like, they're managing themselves, it's going to be easier to have a flat one than hierarchical one. Why? Because usually when you have autonomous team, you're going to have all the indicator, all the, let's say, the measures that you need, they're already given from the team. It's like completely open. So you can get there and get that information, then you process it. And from there, you can take a decision. But like I said, with the company becoming bigger and bigger, you're going to need to reduce that set of measurements, or maybe you're going to need somebody to process them and then give you something smaller. So with the highest information that you need to take your decision.
There is because we talk sometimes about the extremes of a completely flat hierarchy, very hippie culture as we had at the very beginning. And to the other extreme, it would be a very deep and hierarchical 10 levels of approvals and sign-offs and stuff. There are many things in between the two. But one way of looking at this is by spheres of autonomy, right? So it's similar to what you were saying, but you need to define certain boundaries. So you want to provide autonomy to everyone, but you need to be able to draw boundaries in that autonomy. And a lot of times, people talk about autonomy, not accountability. Autonomy cannot be spoken about without talking about accountability. If you want to be autonomous to do certain things, you need to be accountable for the outcome of those things, because otherwise it's never going to work. You cannot be autonomous when someone else is accountable for the output. This will never work. So, and you give a team because it's easier for all of us to understand. If you have a single team working on a single product, it's easier to have the full team to discuss all aspects of that product, from its design, from the testing strategy, from its deployment, maintenance, support, and everything else. When you have a much larger project with tens of teams working on it, you cannot just have someone and say, look, I will use my autonomy, and by the way, I decided this morning that I think we should go from AWS to Azure. That you have millions of pounds or Swiss francs of impact. So yes, look, you don't want, the way that you want to design your class and test your stuff, knock yourself out. But you cannot just say, oh, by the way, you're going to go from our on-premise, and I want you to do microservices in Azure. There's no way that an individual or a team can have this kind of autonomy, because the impact of that decision is way too big, and it will impact far too many more people that will have the accountability for things that you are trying to impact. So, of course, I gave an extreme example just to prove a point, but you need to discuss, you want to provide autonomy so that innovation happens, but you need to have very clear boundaries. It doesn't need to be hierarchical, but you need to have those boundaries defined.
I agree. I had a similar experience too. We had in the company when I was the CEO of this company in Vietnam. We decided to create the company. It was a flat company. So I was the CEO because legal reason I needed to have a manager and a title, and the rest of the company have no title. No one had a title. No one had more hierarchical level and anything like this. And we decided to create like kind of circle, like the holocracy, but we are doing a holocracy really. We did our own stuff. Was a little bit about what's a crystal project or something like this that come from guys in I think it's in Italy somewhere. I think it's Cocoon project. That's come the idea. And so we decided that we have the circle, and each circle have autonomy, but have to the organization and responsible on the customer with the giving. So we had a commercial. It was looking for the commercial for the customers, but as soon it has the customers, and we started for the after I signed the contract, we get the customers to that team, and that team was in charge not only to make the software, but having new projects, continue to nurture the customers to continue working with them, really have a partnership with the customers. And there was product owner, developers, business analysts, anyone would be in there. And what we asked is that on every, let's say, circle, we had one person that was representing that person that was coming to me every once in a while, every week or something like this, or every 2 weeks. They were coming and we were talking, exchanging about topics that were regarding the organization and not just their stuff. I wanted them to bring to me what they were blocking them, that they were not able to resolve themselves. And at the same time, I was able to bring subjects inside these teams, but from an ambassador. And it worked quite well, at least until I left the company.
So there are some interesting things about shifting responsibilities that we've been trying. For example, a lot of people talk about autonomy, but they want certain types of autonomy, but not others. That's another problem. So they say, look, I want you to be able to make my own decisions, but they don't want you to be accountable for their own happiness. For example, team health, right? So there are some tools that you measure people go and vote and say, like they will say how they're feeling and whatever. So before, they were expecting that some manager somewhere could see their anonymous complaints on a tool and then would go there and try to solve their own problem. And then we said, like, you know what, this is broken. So why is it someone else's responsibility to look after the team health? Why is the team not looking after itself? And then we shift that and say, you know what? Whose fault is that the team is unhealthy? Whose fault is that? Is it a manager that is not even close to that? And what do they expect that this person that is outside gonna do? This is someone else's job to say, oh, how can I make you happy today? Right? So first of all, we're not there to be happy, right? So of course we want to have pleasure in our work. But again, we lose sight that we are providing a service, that we are professional. So then we try to shift that back to them. So look, you know what? This is the team health. This is you. Those are the metrics that you provided the data to, and the team is not very happy with that. Seems that you are a bit frustrated and stuff. What are you doing about that? Or do you expect me to make a top-down decision that is going to piss you off anyway? Because I'm not going to make it better. But if you could say, hey, you know what, let's talk and see what we can change. And if there is something that the team doesn't have the autonomy to do, then at that point, you say, hey, you know what, we've been having a chat, we sat down, and those things are going to make our lives much easier. Those are the ones that we're having, and have a few proposals. That is a mature team for me. That is really having accountability. That's a team can be empowered. Another thing that we were discussing, we had a service company, right? So a service company has different problems than a product company, but for example, I can measure far easier the impact that each team has in our clients, right? Because we have projects that people are paying for that team in a specific client. So what if we made the teams responsible for the revenue? Right? So, because then whose responsibility is it to get more business or to make sure that we resolve the problems that we're having in that project? or the loss of revenue, or when someone just wake up and they tend to do that every Friday, wake up with a headache. And say, you know what, I'm not going to work today. And the client is there. And the teammates, now they need to step in and share that pain because the person is not available. So whose responsibility to fix that? And this is the thing that sometimes is interesting to discuss. How much autonomy do you really want? And in which areas? Do you want the autonomy just to keep hacking your code and do whatever you want? Or do you want to have the accountability of the business that you are responsible for? Because when the teams mature to that level of professionalism, then we are having a serious conversation of autonomy, of empowerment, because they look after the entire thing. Not only, I want to do this refactoring and no one lets me do it. Right? So, and I think that as we start pushing that responsibility, then we have less management that we need to do. Because if the team is not measuring their own risks in their product, so risk management, we have to teach our teams how to do risk management. That comes in many different ways. Stakeholder management, regardless if you are a service or a product, you have stakeholders, right? So you have people that care about what you're doing. So all of those different things, rotation of people, changes in the team, people don't want to be there anymore, or someone resigns, or they need to grow the team. All of those aspects are being shifted away to someone outside the team because the team doesn't want to be involved with that. But they want the autonomy to hack their code. So having those discussions, I think that makes things far more interesting, and that will touch in the scalability of your business. When you are talking about truly autonomous team, I'm not talking autonomous about how they want to design their code. I'm talking about they're running the area of the business. That becomes far more interesting to talk about.
Well, I think, sorry, I have a question.
Yeah. So you mentioned top down. So I wanted to know more about bottom up. So let's assume you do have these teams. And let's say somebody joined, like the person who was all better after 3 years, and it really is that you need to switch from Azure to AWS. Like, how do you make sure that this point of view, which is actually the right choice, let's say, like reach your ear and diffuse in the rest of the company?
No, the problem, I just worry that I'll be answering all the questions and not giving space. So if you guys want to.
Okay, so I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to go back for that to my point. So the thing is, like, if you are, this is the thing that I've seen in many organizations. We are developer. We only look to the computer, but we don't look to the impact that can be outside of what we are. So the good example that I have is, like, we have something that is in on-premise. We're shifting to AWS. We know that, like you said, they're gonna give us like a lot of benefits, but it's gonna be at some cost. And I'm not sure that cost that we need it right away. Maybe it's running okay right now, but we don't have, like, we need some kind of strategy to do it. This is the first thing. But we need also to measure the impact, and when I'm talking about the impact, it's going to be financial, also about our customer, because if you are switching from that kind of architecture to another, maybe you're going to be down for like 15 days, and we're going to lose like half of the customers. So this is really tricky, because usually if you don't have that accountability, you're going to do it anyway. You're going to say, okay, I don't care about the customers. I'm going to do my stuff. I'm going to move to that nice architecture, but it shouldn't be the case. You should be accountable for that, because if we don't have a business, you're going to lose your job. And this is how you should be thinking about that. Going back to the topic of the service, I worked with a company that to make you accountable for the business, what they usually do. And one of the company that I work for, they're doing that. And I like it. The idea is like, okay, so you have your salary. It's less than what you have in the market, but you have some kind of variables that is indexed on let's say, the value that you give to the customer. And that thing is really indexed on measurement that done by like the commercial or somebody else who goes to the customer and asks them about the work that you do as a team, and also the business that you bring it back to the company, because sometimes you can bring a business, but maybe it's not in your team. It's going to create a new team. So that's the kind of impact that you can have. What I'm trying to say is like giving the to people is really the best way to have it, but it can be, it need to be impactful for that person. So she or he understand that if he doesn't work, you don't have a customer, you're gonna only have, like in my case, you're gonna have only your salary. You will not get that bonus. You will not get these kind of advantages or something like that. So the impact, it becomes from the company, it becomes really personal as a person. So it's like you become accountable also of what you give to the company in that way.
We just need to be careful with the motivators that we give as well, and because there is an argument is like you are already paying to do the best job you can, right? Of course, and in this case, you mentioned that it's almost like a salesperson. They have a smaller
Exactly.
base, but they complement, is part of that deal and that. So I understand that I can see how that can work in certain companies, not so much in others where it's not a clear cut. Because another point to this is to think that everyone is able to do any job. That's another aspect that needs to be discussed. Because, like, for example, we need to empower people. Sure, to do what? And I give like an example. For example, I trust my wife with the life of my kids, with my life, but I would not trust her to run my company. Right? So it's not because I don't love her. It's because there is a certain skills that you need to have in order to make certain decisions. There is a degree of experience that you need to have to make certain decisions. And not everyone, although they can be willing to do those things. For example, I cannot take a person that just joined our industry and say, I need to rely on you to architect our enterprise system. Because you are part of the team, you should have an equal voice with everyone else. It just doesn't work like that. See what I'm saying? You also need to earn, because like we had loads of those discussions, right? So I'll get back to you, by the way, to the example that you gave. But I think that this is important. When you talk about accountability and stuff, there is an element of trust as well that you build in who you're going to give that accountability to, right? So you hire certain people in certain positions because they are different. They bring different skills. And given the different experiences and skills that they have, they will have certain autonomy to make some decisions, but not others. But what you cannot do is just a broad brush and everyone can make any decision just because they're part of the team.
That's why you need to have boundaries on the teams.
What's that?
That's why you need to have boundaries on the teams. To say where they have the decision, they have the right, and what is not, and when they need to escalate it, or
is the spheres of autonomy that I was talking before. And just to go back to the point that you were asking, so we as developers, sometimes we clearly see that maybe using a new technology or migrating to something else we are convinced that that's the right thing to do, and we get annoyed. And how on earth no one else can see that? It's clear to me. And there is a book that I like a lot. It's called Extreme Ownership. I absolutely love that book. There is another one that's called Turn the Ship Around that is also very good. But Extreme Ownership is a book that basically, like, for example, the way that I embrace some of those principles is like everything that doesn't go according to how I would like it to go, I will first of all look at me. Where am I failing? If it's so clear to me that this is a good thing, why am I failing to communicate that? So what am I missing? See what I'm saying? Because it's very easy sometimes for us to, for example, we want something and we don't get it, and then we shift that to someone else is stupid. They cannot understand what I'm saying. But I think that this changes when you say, like, how can I now make the case? And if it's clear to you, although it's hard, but over time, you learn how to present an idea with the right case, if you like, for the person For example, if you are migrating that, you will need to talk about the financial. There's no way around. And the financial is just the small thing, because the financial might be even worse. You might even expend more, but you need to be very clear what you're going to be saving. What will be the path from where we are to the new architecture? How are we going to make sure that business as usual keeps going? How do we make sure that there's no outage? So we don't have like loss of service and stuff like that. So because the person that might not agree with that decision is because maybe there are a lot of concerns that they have that your proposal are still not addressing. See what I'm saying? And then you have like conversation like, what are the impediments? So those are the clear benefits. First of all, do we agree that that would be a benefit? Yes. So what are the blocks then? So you need to broaden how we are proposing things.
It's a matter of priority.
Hmm?
Sometimes it's priority. The answer is always, yeah, only go fast. Or now we have other deal.
Yeah, but for example, time and money are constraints that you need to deal with, right? So it's not that they are invalid constraints, they are valid constraints. So that means that given the constraints of time and money, they will need to prioritize certain things over the others. So they will have their reasons for prioritizing certain things that are different from yours. So where is the failure in there, in the communication? Either you don't see all the aspects that they are considering, or they don't see all the other aspects. So this is where I think that we developers, we fail at that. We still have a very technical view of the world, and we sometimes fail. Even sometimes we have good ideas, we have the right cases, but we fail to communicate that, to actually translate. Like we go there, for example, I think we should invest in doing refactoring. Who the hell cares? What exactly are you trying to do with that refactoring? What is the value? Because you are asking someone to pay a lot of money for you to do a specific job. If you cannot even articulate the value of that, it will be a tough call. And I always say that revert the roles. Revert the roles. Put yourself in the position of who is paying. Your gardener came in, your dentist, your hairdresser and stuff. And they are proposing things that you are not considering and asking more money to do that. And not only more money, they are asking you to not do what you wanted to do and to favor what they're proposing to you. There's no way that you're going to simply accept that if they cannot convince you that that's a good idea. Right?
Okay. Olivier, how you want to do? It's already 7:15.
As you like, we can close here, or do you want to ask one more question? Do we have one more bullet point on this topic?
I've got one question.
Yeah.
What practices have you found during the years that could have improved the hiring process, even at the interviewing level?
Anyone wants to take that? I go ahead.
Clearly the question.
Huh?
I didn't understand.
The question was, what would be the practices that we can use to increase the quality of the interview process, the selection process?
Going at
Selection process. It depends on the kind of how you do the selection process. As I see that we see a lot of kind of selection process. There are some companies they you pass a test of knowledge. I'm a little bit against this because some people are very good to pass this kind of exam, but then on working place they're not good at like this because they're good in theory but not really in practice. So that's why I was like, for example, me, we tried process, we tried different process. We read things that Sandro say, and I think you made a presentation somewhere about the recruitment process and things like this.
2 chapters of my book was on the selection process.
Yes, yeah, your chapter, and you had a presentation. I don't remember where, but it's on YouTube. So we decided to make I think it was a 5-step process. So the first one, it was just normal talking. It was me, there was some other developers, especially the developers that will have the developer, because everything is very important that the team that will have the person would like to have that person. If he doesn't like, it doesn't worth to coming. So just refers to this is general talking and like this. And then what we ask, because we were looking for passionate developers, so we asked to the developers and say, okay, you come here for a position of Java developers. Okay, fine. What we're asking you is that now you coding something for us. And let's say in Python, give you the full week for developing that stuff in Python. We don't care if it's working or not. What we care is how you do it, what would be the quality and so on. And so if the developer was saying, no, I'm here for the Java, not for doing anything else, it was a stop for us because we don't want to have developers that were just stick to a stack, but open to learn other stack. That was the first part of the elimination that we had. And then, so when the guy was coming back, or the guy or the girl was coming back, we had the interview, we asking him to explain us what he did, what he learned, what he see that was good or bad things about this language, as it was maybe new for him. So to see how we, if we look at more deeply inside, try to understand the language and not just basic stuff of the stack. If you try to apply some unit tests in it or not, if you did learn through the TDD or without TDD learning, thing like this, trying, and then we did a pair programming with one of the developers, and we were asking him to improve his code to see how it can behave. And when everything was fine here, then the last one was the HR, because we didn't trust the HR. As you say on your book, the HR, the problem is when you ask them, we want to have someone that is passionate, the HR say, yeah, okay, what's the keyword to look for a passionate person? So that's why.
Well, actually, going to the topic of HR, we are, most of the organization, they are doing it backwards. So we're starting with the HR to see if the person is going to be fit for the culture, but it shouldn't be the case because it should be the team that chooses. And one of the things that you've talked about, for example, code review, we are actually, I've been working with the companies like that. We give them exercise, they work on it, and they get it back. And when they get it back, the idea is actually not only about the skills and the code, it's also see if that person is open to criticism. So it's like we are trying to see, is it in the good mindset? And in the same time, is it a person that, when we are going to talk about something, they're going to try to see that. So there is a continuous improvement and try to see maybe going back to us. And I've seen some candidates that do that when I've done the interview. After a week or something like that, they already started the next interview with the human resource. But in the same time, that person look to the aspect or the concept that we were discussing about, and try to get further than that, and going back to me like asking phone questions. So it's really a good thing that I've seen. In my opinion, what I look in an interview is like the mindset. That's the first thing, because that's the person that going to be good to work with. I'm sure that is going to be, very funny. Let's not use the word funny, but it's going to be easy to work with, especially to do some stuff, pair programming, no programming, or this kind of stuff, or maybe trying to resolve some kind of problem together. The other one also is the feature, let's say a culture fit. I'm not talking about the enterprise as it is, but like I said, the team also. And it can be the enterprise if you try to scale that with the enterprise, because sometimes you're going to have a tech culture, or maybe even an enterprise culture, depends on the enterprise. And the last thing is going to be the skills. But sometimes the skills is going to be on the top. Why? Because it depends on the profile that we are trying to get. So these one, I think I've seen them like the pillar, and sometimes the skill is going to be shift depending on the profile that we are looking for.
Yeah, and what I say is, the interview process needs to be tailored to what you need, right? So we changed our process multiple times over the years, and we we actually failed in the past to identify certain things that were very important to us. Again, we are a service company. So, for example, identifying cultural fit within a team in a service company is almost impossible because you don't have a team. When you join the organization, you might be put in a team for one project, then 6 months later, you move to a completely different team, different staff and stuff. So, for example, even having, like, for example, a specific team should usually be difficult. So, but what we were missing was there was a mismatch of what we were assessing to what we were expecting from people. For example, we were very heavy on the TDD and technical practices because there is a minimum foundation that you would expect our people to have, mainly in a company like ours that is born from the craftsmanship community. Of course, that we expect every person that is called a developer to be able to test drive better than the average of developers around the world. And although that remained true for a long time until we changed. And we had to establish different levels. So we had, I think that even this today we had like you, me, and Olivier, we were talking about that earlier on before this. We were assessing for practices that they are important to a certain level of developers. So, for example, younger developer, that their main work will be to be writing code, picking user stories, churning out features and stuff. They need to test drive code very well, at least for the company that we have, right? For the values that we want them to have. However, what we had was we had senior developers that could open full clients that were massively experienced with enterprise systems, that could walk into any large organization today and sit down with their C-level, VP off, heads off, and understand what the organization needs, create a strategy to solve those systems. But our juniors would reject them in a pair program. So there is a mismatch in there because people at that level, the core of their work is not working with TDD anymore. Right? So the value that they have is that breadth of experience to go to multiple different types of places and figure out what would be the best strategy for them to fix their systems or create new systems. So our interview process was not aligned to every single job we had, and we lost a lot of good people and then it could create another problem. Because because it was not a single interview, we had a few interviews. And then what happened was sometimes we hired the person and then the juniors were pissed off and said like, this person is not that great, and was hired at a senior level than me. Because the person that was younger, their core skills are TDD, but they didn't even have the experience to understand the core skills of this other person, how that person would contribute. So we had to start tailoring. So every time we have now different levels and we have very clear expectations in that progression. And that progression is aligned to the kind of sector that we have. So when we have someone that's coming at a specific salary level, and we can look at the CV roughly, what they've done, it's easier for us to say, like, let's say we have 5 levels. It's easy to, I think that this person is in between those 2 levels, or these 2, or these 2. So I mean, so then we tailor the interview according to that level. What I cannot do is to have a person with a high level of salary that is not able to do the job in here. And the higher levels, they will involve a lot of team leadership. I expect my senior people to lead teams, to open new projects, to manage clients, to be responsible for the full performance of the team, including the team health, the risks of the project. That's where I need that. There's no way that a person that just joined our industry will be able to do that kind of job because you need years. See what I'm saying? So we had to adapt. So the advice I think I'm trying to say is, in a very long-winded way, you need to tailor the interview for what core skills you need. And of course, there is all the social aspect. That's another thing that we've done. We hired some amazing developers that they could not work with anyone. They were a pain in the ass to work with, and they had to go.
Okay. I think we stop here.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
It's ready. 7:30.
Question?
Any other question before we stop? Otherwise, anyway, is stay here at least for a few minutes. The time we finish the bottle. So you have the apero is there. You're welcome to stay with us.
Do we have
and
any questions
finish with-
from the people online? Or Is there anything?
Yep.
We didn't pay much attention to it.
No, I have no question. We have two people, maybe.
All right.
What? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sandro.
Thank you very much.